Hello, everybody. It's great to have everybody joining us, albeit virtually today, hopefully with COVID-19 related restrictions between the UK and Brazil lifting. We'll be able to meet again face to face very soon. It's also great to be sharing the stage with our great friends at the British Chamber of Commerce in Brazil, with the EIC, with Octopus Energy, and with BP. My name is Tony Preston. I'm the Deputy Director for the UK's Department for International Trade in Brazil, based in Rio de Janeiro. And I'm also DIT's Director for Clean Growth and Energy Transition for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's these two areas that I'm going to be focusing my remarks on today. We could move to the next slide, please. Now, as I'm sure everybody in the room today already knows, in less than 2 weeks' time, the UK will have the honour of hosting, of chairing COP26 in Glasgow. And the UK government wants to use this opportunity to drive international cooperation for sustainable growth, and of course to avoid a global climate disaster. And I think it's fair to say that the clock really is ticking faster and louder on this. The latest IPCC report demonstrates that we urgently need to step up global actions in response to climate change. We need to secure a greener and cleaner future for all of us, including the countries and communities most vulnerable to climatic change. Next slide, please. And for the UK government, the required response seems together states and cities, development banks, business, investors, civil society, academia, to help facilitate access to investments in cleaner alternatives for all of us. And our goal is to build subnational and business coalitions with support from international partners to deliver radical change in clean growth and sustainable living, not only for the environment, but for people. One of the most important agendas amongst all of this is called Race to Zero. And this campaign mobilizes states, cities, regions, companies, investors, higher education, all committed to the same goal: halving global carbon emissions by 2030 and reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050 at the latest. Collectively, Race to Zero actors now cover nearly 25% of global CO2 emissions and over 50% of global GDP. And the list of members is growing day by day. In Brazil, we have more than 120 actors who have already committed to Race to Zero. Next slide, please. And to make the change that I just described happen, the mobilization of business and financial services sectors is going to be absolutely fundamental. In Brazil, we've established fantastic partnerships with the British Chamber of Commerce, with the Energy Industries Council, and with many other commercial bodies. We really do appreciate the support private sector companies are providing in this collective effort. I know that there are some Race to Zero members in the audience today, so thank you for all of your commitments, and we obviously hope that others will follow suit sooner rather than later. As former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney has said, if some companies fail to adjust to a net zero carbon world, they will simply cease to exist. The risks are clear, but in fact, the opportunities are even clearer. So COP26 is a critical moment, but a meeting in Glasgow isn't going to solve everything. As we recover from the coronavirus pandemic, each of us as individuals at a federal level, subnational, businesses, civil society face a choice between laying the foundations for solid, sustainable and inclusive growth or falling behind in the coming decades. The UK policy on this is that a green and resilient recovery will create jobs and industries for the future, whilst at the same time addressing the urgent and interconnected challenges of public health, climate change, and biodiversity loss. Next slide, please. And the UK believes that clean growth is absolutely possible. As you'll see from the graph on the slide right now, since 1990, the UK economy has grown by 75%, and at the same time, we've reduced our emissions by 43%. And this was done by working together with the private sector and building new partnerships and new facilities. And we believe that by investing in clean technologies such as wind, bioenergy, solar and hydrogen, the UK will support a global shift and a new green industrial revolution. Next slide, please. So to build momentum, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced the UK's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution. This plan will mobilise over £12 billion of new government investment to create over 250,000 new green-collar jobs in the UK and to deliver the UK's own net zero commitments. The 10 points include advancing offshore wind, driving the growth of a low-carbon hydrogen sector, delivering new and advanced nuclear power, accelerating the shift to zero emissions vehicles, green public transport, net zero in shipping and in the air industry, greener buildings, investing in carbon capture, usage and storage, protecting the natural environment, and boosting green finance and innovation. Next slide, please. And as I speak right now, the government is in Parliament putting forward a new net zero strategy. We'll aim to circulate this later today, hot off the presses. But put simply, the strategy states that by growing domestic capacity in these areas, the UK will be better able to support other countries, states, regions to go further and faster with their own clean growth ambitions and energy transitions. Next slide, please. And bringing this to the kind of UK-Brazil context, this approach is why the cooperation that we have developed with our Brazilian partners is of great relevance to the UK government. We have had great success with a number of projects, ranging from promoting sustainable low-carbon agriculture to accelerating the energy transition. But there's a lot more that we can do together. In the last year, we, as the UK government, have stopped supporting new fossil fuel developments internationally due to their climate impact. But we believe that the skills and knowledge acquired by the oil and gas industry will be essential for the ever-increasing growth of clean energy. And that's a big deal. An example of this transfer of knowledge to new industries is taking place in offshore wind, a renewable energy source in which the UK is a world leader. This sector now accounts for around 10% of electricity in British homes, with a forecast of creating 60,000 new jobs by 2030. And we believe that this sector will also have a prominent role in the diversification of the electricity sector and in the growth of the Brazilian economy in the future. Not least because the potential for offshore wind development here in Brazil is incredibly impressive. For everything I've heard and seen in the last couple of years that I've been here in Brazil, I'm sure that you can only have one of the most competitive offshore wind generation sectors in the world in the coming years. This will require a credible regulatory framework and a strong commitment from across government, federal and local, to develop a market that takes full advantage of the enormous potential that exists in a green economy. And the UK government stands ready to continue supporting the development of this framework. Next slide, please. In addition to offshore wind, the UK government's energy programme for Brazil is also working to support the development in a range of other energy sectors: solar, hydrogen, biogas, and waste to energy in particular. Our goal is to support policy and regulation, to increase research and development and innovation, to build capacity and technical assistance, to support Brazil's energy transition and enhance energy security and affordability across the country, creating the enabling environment that businesses need in order to export and invest. And further along the road, we see the potential for utilising offshore skills gained in the deep water oil industry to support the establishment of thriving offshore wind. The UK's oil capital, Aberdeen, is now a hub for renewable technologies, and I know that they are keen to increase their engagement in Brazil in these areas. So despite the current challenges, the current situation that we face, there is plenty of opportunity for growth and reasons for optimism. The UK's Department for International Trade has a large team of specialists in Brazil dedicated to assisting British companies to do business here, and indeed to support Brazilian companies to find quality British partners as well. This is all allied to the products and support of UK Export Finance, which is the world's first export credit agency. And I can say without any doubt that you can count on the excellent and expert energy team based at the British Consulate General in Rio de Janeiro, as well as our wider diplomatic network to support you. Next slide, please. So that's really all from me. I wish you all an excellent event and look forward to many more fruitful years of UK-Brazil partnership in the energy sector and beyond. Thank you very much. Back to you, Fabio.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm very impressed. I do need to have this presentation. I like that very much. Quite a summary and very impressive actions by the UK government. Particularly, I was quite impressed with the 43% down emissions since 1990 and the 68% plus reduction by 2030. This is pretty impressive. You know, I have the vision that the key issue for all of that is governance, international and national governance for low carbon. And I think that the UK is giving an example, and several parts of this example could be copied by many governments and companies as well. So good morning, everyone. I'm the president of Britain in Rio de Janeiro. I'm also the president of the Power and Renewables Committee. It is a great pleasure, you know, to be here to moderate this main panel of the UK Arena or Arena UK. I'm also the founding partner of LS Lightsaber Management Consultancy, which is focused on institutional relations, communications, and non-technical risks. I would like to thank the audience for being here with us. Also to the organizers of the Energy Connection Summit 2021, in the person of Mrs. Renata Abreu, for inviting, also thank you, Renata, for inviting Britain to lead the Arena UK. My friend, Carlos Peixoto, who is surely watching it, is the president of the Oil and Gas Committee. And Mr. Renato Cordeiro is my vice president of the Power and Renewables Committee and works for the British government, the GIT. To British staff, Fabrício Soares, Mayra Munhoz, Clara Sassi, and Letícia Costa, and to the internal teams of the participating companies. We see on screen here, Clarice is smiling always, Guilherme I'm knowing more now, and Celso I know for a long time. Thank you for being here, and also your teams for supporting it. Tony, again, the Deputy Consul General for the UK in Rio, for your availability, Tony, and the support to this panel here, and to Britain, the UK government. We work very closely with the British government. Again, Clarice Rocha, the Americas Director of the Energy Industries Council. You know, I know Clarice since she was a very young child in Britain, isn't it, Clarice? Guilherme, thank you. William Castro, Guilherme. Thank you very much for being here. The Project Innovation Manager at Octopus Energy. Celso Fiore, my friend in BP. The Government Relations Senior Manager at BP. Thank you very much for being here. So we invite everyone to write your questions via the Energy Connection Summit platform chat inside the UK Arena page. This chat is available next to the presentation stream. I'm going to moderate it, and the Bridgeon team will be sending me the question. Please, I beg you, don't shy out on this. You know, you have a great opportunity. There's a lot of knowledge on screen here. Please make questions. We are 12 days now from one of the main meetings, summits in history. I said recent history here. I changed my script here. In history, I would consider COP26, right? And this is very, very important moment. So we are here. I'm not going to show my presentation, guys. It's going to be quick about Bridgeon here because of the time. No, Bridgeon's mission statement is to be the reference of the UK-Brazil business community, providing a forum to foster bilateral trade, investment, service, and relationship. These are beautiful words, but in summary, Bridgeon's mission is, if you have any idea of doing business on anything related to the UK and Brazil, just, you know, make a stop, get in touch with Bridgeon at some stage, always, which does not mean, you know, does not preclude you to contact Bridgeon's partners. Some of them are, you see on screen, the EIC with Clarice. We have offices in Rio, São Paulo, Paraná, and Minas Gerais states. The membership, we do a very strong networking with very high decision-making executives in Brazil and the UK. We have lots of committees and discussion groups. We have an advisory committee of advocates. They cover basically all key business sectors in Brazil. So there will be several fronts and opportunities to learn more about these sectors in these committees. Please just visit the British Chamber's website at www.bridgeon.com.br. So as I said before, we have a strong support from the British government as never before in the 105 years of history of Bridgeon in Brazil. So all the questions will be mediated by the organization of the event. I'll be receiving it from the British team. And Clarice, you know, now the floor is yours, my friend. All the best for the three of you. And I'll be sending you, hopefully, some very nasty questions here, guys.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Can you just confirm if you're seeing my screen, please? Yes, okay. So good morning, everyone. Fabio, always very charming, very nice receiving and opening an event. So today I would like to thank the invitation for the British Chamber to be part of this special Energy Connection event. I am, as Fabio said, I'm the director for the Americas at the EIC, the Energy Industries Council. And I came here today to talk a little bit about the perception of energy transition from the UK supply chain. Before we go into that, I would like to just briefly explain to you what's the EIC and what do we do so that we can set the scene and we can get started. So the EIC, we are a non-for-profit trade association. We are focusing enabling the suppliers to grow and export. Today we have about 60 people working worldwide, based in unique international hubs. And we have about 700 member companies globally who are suppliers to the energy sector. So it's very broad in that sense. We organize events and we also work with business intelligence. I'll go into that. But just last year, we held about 150 events online, gathering about 12,000 attendees. But how do we do that? So we actually help our members to identify and win business globally. And we do that through 3 databases, which are our market intelligence tools. The first one is ESG Data Stream, which is related to the mapping all the CapEx, all the investment that is being done into the projects worldwide. And we have more recently launched asset map, where we track all the assets that become live. So this is most towards companies working in OEM. And we have mapped the UK supply map. Through the UK supply map, we have mapped all companies in the UK working in the supply chain of the energy sector. And you will see more details, because I brought a little bit about the energy transition and companies active in this sector. We help companies with bespoke market intelligence as well through EIC Inform. And we do that through the offices we have. So we have office in Houston. I'm based here in Rio, but also in the UK, in Dubai, and in Kuala Lumpur. Those are the other areas where the EIC works on. We organize the UK pavilion at the bigger trade shows related to energy. We also have launchpad facilities in each one of those offices. And here, particularly in Brazil, we help companies register with Petrobras. Besides, of course, sharing a lot of intelligence through country and insight reports. So that's the EIC in the summary. And now I'm going to dive into the energy transition. So to begin, today we brought a little bit of the perception of the energy transition in the UK. For the 5th consecutive year, our CEO, Stuart Broadley, held a series of interviews with over 60 companies from the supply chain to hear their stories about Survive and Thrive, which is actually the name of this report, which is available and free for all to download in our website. After hearing each one of those companies, we came to some conclusions and lessons. And this is one page of the report. When it comes to energy transition, we decided to ask their views on what it actually means to each one of those companies. And so would it be like investing a lot in renewables, or ceasing the use of oil and gas, or installing solar panels in their house and buildings, or focusing on carbon capture? And well, what we realized is that there was no single answer. If you ask each person what is energy transition to them, you will find a different meaning. So we have proven that through this round of interviews, and we collected all their definitions from each interviewee company. And after that, we realized that what the answers had in common was that this is a journey. This is something that requires commitment over the years and decades. And it won't be done here and now. It's not immediate, but it is a journey that has to start somewhere. So if you look at the slides, you will see that half of the responses mentioned the need for carbon reduction. About 70% of them recalled the need to diversify investments for renewables, moving away from oil and gas. About a third of the responses mentioned the need for innovation. But what surprised us was that less than 1% actually studied the impact of their own business on reducing their carbon footprints. So that is food for thought there, make us reflect. We felt the need then to come to a more concise definition. And for us, we understand that energy transition needs to engage with everyone. It can't stay in the sphere of government. It needs companies and individuals to cooperate independently from these organizations. However, they can and should establish a dialogue to cooperate. So government needs to define their public policies, but companies also need to set their internal goals and invest. And of course, invest. And individuals should play their role as a society demanding change, which means all working in complementary action plans. When it comes to countries, there is no one size fits all, and there is no single solution. The strategy of, let's say, Colombia or Brazil or the UK, they start from different steps. Each country is in a different scenario, but the destination is the same: to limit the global temperature increase to up to 1.5 degrees by reducing greenhouse emissions. Now that we have defined this from our experience, let's look at the global opportunities in those sectors. So we have brought here the total amount of investment announced in the broad energy spectrum between 2021 and 2030. This totals $9.6 trillion of investment. Both graphs, they show the amount being invested in new projects on the broad range of the energy sector. The graph on the left details each layer of this energy sector. Although there are many new projects related to renewables, hydrogen, and energy transition, together they still represent only about 30% of the overall investment, which we can see highlighted on the right side, where we can see that almost all almost 70% of the investment still goes towards mature hydrocarbon and power. So that means that for the supply chain, opportunities will come, of course, in the new sectors of energy transitions, but they're not immediate. And that's the message we want to pass, that this transition has to be smooth to allow the supply chain to grow into those sectors as well and enjoy those opportunities. And then now looking at the supply chain, as I was mentioning, we launched this new database called the Supply Map, where we map all companies active in the energy sector in the UK. Recently, we have mapped as well within Supply Map which companies are active in the energy transition spectrum. So within energy transition, we are including here hydrogen, energy storage, and CCUS. Out of the 4,000 companies that we have mapped from the UK supply chain, we noticed there are only 355 companies already active in energy transition segment, which shows exactly the message that there is room for the supply chain to transition into these sectors. Energy storage clearly represents, looking at the graph, more capability, but there is still a learning curve, especially for hydrogen and carbon capture. There are, though, companies who have already, let's say, woken up to the need of being involved in energy transition and have started engaging in those sectors. So I have brought two examples of companies who are moving from away from oil and gas towards energy transition. Both, they have been affected by the downturn, especially during the pandemic last year. The first example is from Advanced Insulation, which you can see on the screen. A company originally focused on insulation, they chose to diversify their portfolio by looking at the offshore wind segment, which is interesting that Tony Press just mentioned that the capabilities of the UK in offshore wind. And although it's important to emphasize that they have been working on this strategy since 2017, when they focused on developing new technologies, but also they decided to acquire a company related to buoyancy. And of course, with the pandemic last year, it just helped them prioritize and speed up change. And as a result, they were granted contracts exceeding £20 million only last year, even in the middle of a pandemic, and they are now participating in more and more bids. So that just shows that diversifying to different sectors is possible. You can read in more details the story about this company as well as the 60 others as part of the Survive and Thrive report that I mentioned. The second example is from Crondell Energy. They also faced a challenging 2020 with the fall in prices. Being a consultancy and engineering company, they chose to diversify from oil and gas, however, moving towards carbon capture. As a result, they formed a partnership and they are now providing consultancy to the UK government, to the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, the BEIS, leading towards new contracts that support now 10% of their turnover. So a key finding from this story is the importance of involving all stakeholders, which in this case involves even the government as well. And policies, they need to integrate the supply chain. That's I think the key message here. Those key findings from this report and the interviews, we have mapped the key findings of lessons that we learned from all the stories. And the key findings that became apparent from the interviews of the importance of involving government and the importance of taking strong actions soon, which I think is something the UK government is doing. So those are lessons, of course, for the UK government. However, many will also fit other countries like Brazil, so that companies can actually also be part of the energy transition, having transitioned their portfolios. Some examples are of lessons and findings are to move closer to your stakeholder, to organize an action plan for the development of offshore winds, which is something that the government mentioned, which can bring big opportunities for the suppliers of goods and services, especially from the oil and gas industry. It's a easier and smoother transition. Promoting collaboration, for example, by opening up discussion forums to engage with innovation, and of course, exchange experience, having finance lines available and bringing together research centers with the industry. So with the sense of collaboration, The EIC, this is one of the EIC initiatives. The EIC is directly involved. It's called UCASC, so it's the UK Energy Supply Chain Task Force, which is nothing more than a task force involving organizations and suppliers of the British supply chain in order to ensure a more readily transition to a green economy, as well as boosting British exports and increasing internationalization. So several institutions and organizations representing the supply chain, you can see that on your screen, came together, I think for the first time, sat together with government to discuss the way forward. And as part of this initiative, this group, I have brought here some of the objectives. This group aims to broaden the voice of the industry in government, but also to support the development of public policies in order to enable this energy transition as well for the supply chain. One of the main objectives is to strengthen the supply chain capacity with technologies that are crucial to the implementation of energy transition, sharing best practices and collaborating to complement sectorial initiatives that are of great value to regional and sustainable actions. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I would like to leave my contact details here. If you would like to understand a little bit more about the EIC, but also energy opportunities globally, or to be part of the EIC membership, please feel free to drop me an email and it'll be a pleasure to be of contact. Fabio, I'm passing over the word back to you.
Thank you, dear Clarice. Thank you very much for your presentation. I confess to you that I was a bit frightened when you said the 1%, you know. Less than 1%, you know, have thought, you know, planned how to reduce emissions in the companies in the research. Look, for those who are arriving now, my name is Fabio Caldas, and we had the presentation now from Clarice. We are in the session on the UK and the decarbonization of the energy sector, the role of the private sector. So now, I'll give the floor to Guilherme. Sorry. Yes, it's to Guilherme. Isn't it, Guilherme? It's you now. I'm not confused here.
Can
so
be.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just know when you guys can see my screen, just to confirm. Can you see it? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, Guilherme. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for the invite, Fabio, Renata. It was a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here to talk a little bit more, especially in this moment. The energy sector, the whole event of COP26 and the decarbonization, it's an important driver to achieve net zero. And we as a company are really active on this floor. But before just jumping, a bit of an introduction on my side. I joined the energy sector recently, just 2 years ago. I grew my career in the public sector of Brazil, working for the state government of Minas Gerais. And currently, as a project innovation manager at Octopus Energy Generation, we are here trying to understand how we can innovate and disrupt the generation sector as we did on the retail side of the company. So, because we are not in operation in Brazil, I just want to clarify exactly what we are. So Octopus was created 5 years ago as an energy retail company here in the UK. And the main point for us is how we can utilize technology to bring a lower, more transparent pricing, better service, and more sustainable energy to customers globally. And why this is important, the UK market was a really strong brokerage market before the liberalization here. And we have some interesting data where we can see that companies spend only 6 minutes per year with their energy bill. So bringing this information and opening a space for this for customers to deal better with the electricity and achieve a better price and break the barriers to that renewable energy is need to be expensive. It's a really important driver for us. And how we do this? Kraken. Kraken is our in-house software development, our in-house software, which is bringing a transformation to the sector. A good example is that at the moment, we have Kraken license to more than 3 countries across the world. So we have in Australia, Japan, UK, we have the US, Germany, and the software is making the integration of the whole journey of any energy customer that we have in our portfolio, both for business and domestic. And the integration with different technologies allow us to make that customer empowered and autonomous when they are deciding how to consume their electricity, not only in their houses, but every appliance that we are bringing connected to them. So just to explain the size of this group that was created 5 years ago, we are now a 9-company group. So we have not only Octopus Energy on the retail side, but we have other white labels, including M&S Energy, London Power, Unity, and our business supply. But we grow as well to other sectors, including Octopus Hydrogen, with focus on green hydrogen generation here in the UK. Octopus Renewables, which is the largest investor in renewable energy in the UK in solar, and also the third one in Europe. We have also Octopus electric vehicles and our Kraken technologies, which provide flexibility. This is really important to provide the experience for these companies that license our software, and that they are benefiting for easier way and better efficient service provision for the energy customers that they have in their portfolio. But coming for the main topic of the arena here, which I think it's really important, and I would like to share a little bit of our view in terms of how we can achieve net zero in the energy sector. First one is how we integrate every customer on this journey, changing the behavior of the customer and empower them to understand how energy works is essential to make this transformation possible. We have a barrier with customers, and if we keep a top-down solution, we will never achieve completely because we need everyone in this journey. The second point is decentralization. So I think that in Brazil, when we see the energy market, we had terrible examples as the outage in Acre and other states in Brazil. The severe drought season that we are passing now shows that a centralized energy system creates a lot of barriers in the way that we can achieve net zero. We need to be more efficient. We need to reduce the losses that we have when we are generating, transporting, and distributing energy, and how we can do this together with our customers. So the idea of my sector within Octopus Generation is exactly how we can think new business models to incentivize decentralized generation. And at the same time, we bring this technology integration. And what I mean about technology integration is not only co-location. So it's not only putting a solar rooftop and getting a battery storage and installing that house. It's more than this. It's how you use green technologies available in your portfolio to achieve and create a tailored solution for your customer. We have a great example with a bus company operator here in the UK, where we are trying to transform the depot into the hub of the future. This will be a strong case where we use not only generation, but we use the batteries of the buses, we use EV charging points, we use battery storage to provide flexibility and create and expand the customer engagement on this, because we can create a community tariffs based on the excess of generation that depot will be generating during the daylight, whilst the buses are en route and not using the EV charging points. And all of this is supported by innovation. And what I mean as innovation is not only evolving hardwares, evolving technology. We need to think outside the box in the way that we combine technologies and we go after our customers to solve their problems. Energy normally is not the core of that companies, but it's essential for them to achieve the objectives and deliver their core activities. So how we can support these three pillars together, and they are not split. They need to interact throughout the whole journey to make possible that we're going to go and achieve net zero in our goals. And then I want just to highlight and share some examples on our side, how we are applying these three pillars to make this transformation. First example is our community energy tariff, the Octopus Fan Club. So we acquired at the beginning of this year 2 wind turbines, really small, but close to communities, where we created a tariff, a dynamic tariff for the community around the assets. Whenever the wind is blowing, these communities are paying 20% less on their electricity cost. And if the wind reach above 8 meters per second, these communities are receiving a 50% discount. So we want to transform a view that in the UK before, that a wind turbine shouldn't be on my backyard, to the moment that if you're seeing that a wind turbine spinning, it means that you're paying less for your electricity, and you are sure that you're consuming from electric renewable generation source. This is a transformative way of connecting assets and customers into the energy system, which before, if you think on a centralized aspect, would normally come from a lot of wind of offshore plants in North Scotland, and you couldn't create a directly connection with your customer. The second one is our Agile. So it was the first dynamic tariff in the UK market. The difference here is the customer receives a day ahead forecast of how much he will pay for electricity in 48 slots, which is the half an hourly settlement that we work here in the UK market. And they can program how they're going to consume electricity in the next day. So this is a complete transformation if you think for a EV driver that he will say, okay, I'm going to go back home 6 p.m., but I'm going to wait until 8 p.m. to charge and connect to my EV car, because this is the moment that I'm going to be paying less for my electricity. It's a completely game change for these customers and for the company. But at the same time, you can see, as in the picture here, we also pay customers whenever the electricity market is negative. So we can pay customers to consume electricity because they help us to cope and balance the grid. So it's a completely transformation on how we can use tariffs to change behavior. And it's a really strong example of the three pillars of customer behavior, technology integration, and how we decentralize the flexibility responsibility of the grid. The third example is our electric choice network, which is a roaming interoperability of EV chargers. So before, when the chargers, we have many companies, it's a really decentralized market here in the UK. And all the time that you would recharge your EV car, you had to have a RFID card to tap in that specific company providing that EV charger. What we created is with a unique card and any charging networks connected to our electric choice, you can use one card only to access all the charges in our network. And even better, you're going to pay at the end of the month in your electricity bill. So you can control everything of your consumption in one place only, simplifying and make it more efficient for you how you consume electricity. And the fourth example is our R&D center, heat center, that we a multi-million investment to study how air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps will be transformed in our market. And it's a really welcome moment in the UK market to talk about heat pumps when the government just announced the new subsidies where they're going to incentivize with £5,000 new homes that want to change their gas boilers or install new air source heat pumps in their houses. Why this is important? Heat is 1/5 of the gas emissions, the emissions of greenhouse gases in the UK is coming from heating. So helping the customer to change their knowledge and the way that they were used to with gas boilers in the market, it's a education curve. You have a journey to bring these customers with you. And our R&D center will be open for everyone that wants to visit, see the technology operating, but it will also be an opportunity to train more than 1,000 engineers on how to install this technology quicker. Also because this will drive price down and guarantee that we can democratize the access to the technology. So I bring here some examples on how we are working towards net zero and helping our customers at the end to also make their contribution through smart decisions and new incentives on how they will operate any electricity appliance that they have in their home. I put it here, quick video on also some innovation that we used when we were launching our wind turbine, when we launched the fan club. So we did a light show in one of our wind turbines. Hope the sound you can hear. Well, I don't think that the sound is playing, but you guys can see here how we did our launch. This is our wind turbine in Yorkshire. We have another one in South Wales, but we are expanding the fan club. And for sure, we want to bring more and more assets like this close to the community and show that it's not a monster. It's a really important thing to have in your backyard and guarantee that we are generating more renewables. Thank you very much. Fabio, back to you.
Thank you, Guilherme. Thank you very much. I was very interested in knowing more, and I hope that you can address it in the questions part of this webinar on the innovation. The 4 innovation examples which you detail so much. But I'm not advancing a question here. How to bring it all to Brazil, right?
That's a good question, Fabio. I always joke with Greg that we need to go to Brazil as soon as possible.
For those who are arriving now, we already have the presentations of Clarice Rocha, the Americas Director of the Energy Industries Council, EIC, and also Guilherme Castro is on screen now, the Project Innovation Manager at Octopus Energy. We are at the decarbonization sector. The session is called the UK in the decarbonization of the energy sector, the role of the private sector. Now, I'll give the floor to my friend Celso Fiori. He is the Government Relations Senior Manager at BP. Celso, over to you.
Thank you, Fabio. Can you see my screen?
Screen and voice, perfect.
Screen and voice, perfect. All right, thank you, Fabio. Always very kind. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, with this high-level panelists, and probably one of the most interesting panels that we have in this event. I think it's not very far from reality to say that what we are discussing here today is among the top issues that the human kind have ever seen, right? The transition of energy to a lower carbon scenario, to a low carbon energy production. This is basically critical for us to meet the Paris goals and to have a chance to avoid the effects of a climate change, of a global warming. So very glad to be part of this panel. And well, in this, before we jump to the slide, just want to thank the British Chamber of Commerce on behalf of Fabio, and also the organizing committee, Renata, for this invitation. Before we jump to the slides, I would just give you a kind of a very brief perspective about what is BP doing, what is BP's commitment to get there. And I'm very glad to take your questions later on about the details. So, okay, so to jump to the presentation now. Last year, probably if you have seen about BP's history, it was one of the largest transformations that BP have ever seen in his over 100 years history. So BP went through a very important process of reinventing. And this reinventing process promoted kind of a transformation inside the company. So a new kind of company, a new kind of energy company came out of this reinventing process. And what is specifically behind this transformation process? I think there are three main things that are underpinning this whole transformation. One of them is the purpose and an ambition, and there are a few aims that are underpinning the ambition and the purpose. What is the purpose behind this? The purpose is basically to reimagine energy for people and also for the planet. So BP do acknowledge that something bold has to be done to face this climate emergency. And doing that alone will lead us nowhere. We are pretty sure about that. So this is precisely why BP sets the company's ambition. And what is the company's ambition? The company's ambition is to be a net zero company by 2050 or sooner. And a second part that is very important is to help the world to get there too. I will add more color to that shortly. But to bring more materiality to this purpose and to this new ambition, there are some aims that are behind all of it. So these, as you can see in the right side of the slides, we do have 10 main aims that are backing up all this transformation process. The green ones in the right are those focused on BP's net zero ambition, and the blue ones in the left side refers to helping the world to get there too. In this presentation, I will focus on the right side, on the green ones, but I'm happy to address the other ones later on if you want. Okay, very briefly before we jump to the numbers. The first aim is to be net zero in our operations. So it's getting to net zero in our entire operation on an absolute basis by 2050 or sooner. So in the aim 2 is to get to net zero also in an absolute basis for our upstream production by 2050 or sooner as well. And the aim 3 is to reduce the carbon intensity of the products we sell in 50% in the same time frame. This one is on a life cycle perspective, not an absolute basis. So we do have the first one on an absolute basis and the third one in terms of carbon intensity, because we are talking about the whole life cycle of a product that is not entirely under BP's domain. The aim 4 is to implement the measurement of methane in all our major oil and gas processing sites by 2023. So a couple of years from now, less than a couple of years from now, actually. And also to implement transparent reporting and 50% reduction in our methane industry. Aim 5, that is definitely last, but definitely not least, is to increase the proportion of investment into renewable energy. We have numbers to illustrate that in the following slides. So illustrating that a little bit, starting with the part of carbon reduction. So in the first, in the left side, in the first square, we can see that we do have scopes 1 and 2 to get to net zero in our operation emissions, and also the energy provided by our partners. So this is scope 1 and 2, our own operations, and also emissions that come from the energy and other raw material produced by our suppliers. In the middle, and probably one of the most important one, is to get to net zero in scope 3, is to neutralize every carbon molecule that we produce in our upstream business. And I will give you more numbers on that in the next slide. And the third one on the right is to reduce in 50% the carbon intensity of the products we sell. So with that, we believe we can cover the scopes 1, 2, and 3, and we are aligned to the Paris goals. So BP's commitments with net zero is in line with the Paris Agreement. Well, I think the big question now, the first big question now is, how big is that? It's easy to say that we will be net zero in 2050. Not easy, but it's a bit far from now. So how big is that? How material is that? Okay, so just to help illustrate how big is that, this is a pre-pandemic numbers. So 2019, total BP's emissions, scopes 1, 2, and 3, was around 415 million tons of emissions. This is not very far from the total emissions of the UK. So this is a very relevant level of emissions that we have to neutralize and reduce until 2050 to be a net zero company by then. Okay, the next big question. This is 2050. What about the short term? So in the short term, we also have some goals in terms of reduction of emissions. I will not go through each and every one of them for sake of time, but just illustrating a little bit, we do have targets for 2025, that is less than 4 years from now, and also 2030. And we do have one very important milestone here in 2030, that is to increase our investments in new low carbon energies in tenfold. So from around 500 millions in 2019 to reach 5 billion a year of investment in renewable energy by 2030, and 3 to 4 in 2025. That is not far from now. So this is material and this is short term, and for a company like BP, this is very relevant in terms of strategic shift and strategic direction towards a lower carbon production. Well, this are the short-term goals in terms of carbon reduction and investment in new energy. So we do have other short-term goals more related to business, and this is where we can see those. So I will not get to each and every one of them, but just highlighting some of them that I do think that are interesting for this discussion. Today we have around 22,000 barrels a day equivalent in bioenergy production. So we are intending to reach over 100,000 barrels a day of bioenergy by 2030. So this is important for us, and also to reach around 20% in the market share of biojet. Another important one, our oil and gas production down in the third square here. BP intends to reduce the production of oil and gas by 2030 in around 40%. This is a very bold initiative that will let BP to focus on resilient and highly competitive assets in oil and gas production, but reducing around 1 million barrels a day by 2030. So oil and gas will remain a very important piece of our portfolio and will basically be the engine of this transformation, but we'll be more and more reducing the production and focusing on resilient and focused hydrocarbon production. This is very critical. There is another one that I would like to highlight it, which is the partnerships with cities and the industry. This is a different type of aim. We have in the new structure a new team that is focused on finding opportunities of engagement and partnership with industries and also governments to work together to make the deployment of energy solutions towards a lower carbon production and use of final use of energy. We already have announced partnership with Aberdeen and also Houston, and we are aiming to have other partners by the end of the decade. And with that, we do believe we can work together to reach neutrality. So this is also important for us. This is just before I'm reaching the end of my initial remarks. This is just a very brief overview about BP's in Brazil. I think it's important to mention that Brazil is a strategic country for BP. And when we are talking about renewable energy, about lower carbon transition, Brazil can play a key role. Is already playing a key role and can really be one of the key countries in the world driving this energy transition and also sourcing carbon credits that can help the other governments and institutions to meet neutrality. So in this slide, very briefly, we do have in the left side the operated businesses, and then on the right side the business that we have in partnership with other companies. So JVs, for instance. Starting with RBP very briefly, RBP is the second largest player in Brazil in the aviation fuels distribution aviation segment. So we are present in over 33 airports, and RBP has plans to keep developing lower carbon solutions, and also already have in Brazil some carbon offsetting programs with some specific clients. In trading, BP today offers trading and has recently started a power in São Paulo for around 2 years. And we also have a trading, a fuels trading desk, and also a low carbon trading that is coming up to Brazil as well. Lubricants, I think everybody have heard that Castrol lubricants is a well-recognized brand, high quality brand lubricants in Brazil. It's been here since the 60s. In upstream, BP is currently not producing oil and gas in Brazil, but we do have a portfolio of 12 offshore blocks to be explored and some exploration campaigns coming up in the country. In the right side, we do have some JVs. So very briefly, GNA is a gas to power hub in the Açu port in Rio de Janeiro. It's a partnership with Prumo, Siemens, and SPIC. The first plant, GNA1, was launched a few weeks ago in Rio, and it has a 1.3 gigawatt capacity. And there is a second plant that will be starting the construction in the next few weeks. And together, both plants will be the largest thermal power plant in Latin America, with around 3 gigawatts of generating capacity, providing energy to 14 million families. And it represents around 10 billion reais investment. Lightsource BP is the company that BP also is a shareholder of 50%, focused on developing projects of solar power generation in the country. So we acquired Enerlife, a company in Brazil with a portfolio of around 2 gigawatts, and have started a new project in Ceará to add additional 240 megawatts that is being built very shortly. Another relevant JV in the decarbonization agenda is BP Bunge Bioenergia. So BP used to operate 3 mills, and from late 19, BP and Bunge merged their operational assets, reaching now a company that is the second largest producer of ethanol, sugar, bioelectricity, and CBios and carbon credits in Brazil. And it's a very important business providing low carbon fuels for the transport sector. And now very briefly about Opla is a JV with Copersucar that operates a strategic logistics hub in Paulínia, close to the refinery, and is also developing plans to optimize logistics in the region and lowering the cost of fuels logistics in Brazil. And last but not least, NFX is a JV of Prumo as well to supply marine fuels that is also based in Rio. So this is very briefly the business presence of BP in Brazil. And my final slide is just to reinforce the main message behind this whole reinventing process that we've been through in the past 1.5 years. Is basically to transform an international oil company into an integrated energy company. So BP intends that it is no longer an IOC, and now it's an integrated energy company focused on developing and providing low carbon solution and sustainable solutions focused on the consumers. So this is a very brief highlight about what BP is doing and where BP want to go in the next few years, and where Brazil might play a key role on that. So I think I will stop here, Fabio, and happy to take questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Celso. I took notes on 2 points. To go public for 2025 emission reduction targets. This is really impressive. It's great. 2025, people are going for 2030. 2025 is quite impressive, in my view. And also, to create a completely new company, from IOC to integrated energy company in 11 years, it's a journey of 11 years for a giant company like BP. This is quite a task, very challenging. And I know that you're doing a great job there. I've been following this up very closely. Look, I'm having some questions here. They're being sent to me. I will address them, but if you want to drop into one another's questions, please do it very freely here, very relaxed, no embarrassment, right? First one is a question about the EIC data on offshore wind, if EIC has more data on offshore wind. And I don't know if globally or in Brazil. I think it's in Brazil. Clarice is for you. But if Celso and Guilherme would like to jump into this, any comments on EIC, please feel free. Just come into this, and then we talk. Right? I'm going to be here following this up. I'll keep my mic open. Right? I don't have noises here in my office, so I'll keep it open and I'll jump in as well. Please, very freely. Quite a flowing discussion here, and I have loads of other questions here. Clarice, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fabio. So yes, offshore wind is one of the sectors that the EIC covers. And nowadays we have about 500 projects worldwide on the offshore wind, totaling about $1 trillion. Those are only like future and active projects. We have actually just launched, we're about to launch a report on offshore wind, and there is an event. If you're interested in knowing what's happening here in the Americas related to offshore wind, we'll host an event, I think the 28th of October, so it's coming in the next 2 weeks, related to presenting this report, which is also available. So thanks for the question. I think it's a very exciting market. For Brazil in particular, it's the only country with offshore wind projects here in South America. And Brazil has some big projects, however, none of them are live or active yet. They are future promises, but we're very optimistic about it. As Tony Preston mentioned in the beginning, the potential of Brazil being one of the leaders in offshore wind, that's definitely something to watch out.
Thank you, Clarice. Any comments from Guilherme and or Celso on this? If you say no, it's no problem, guys. I have other ones here. No?
Fabio, yeah. Just a quick comment. I think offshore wind is probably the fastest source in terms of growing in the near future. So I think Brazil has a tremendous opportunity in taking a part in this business. BP do not have today existing business in offshore wind in Brazil, but do have relevant projects in other countries, such as US, with the largest project in partnership with Equinor, and also in UK, and hopefully continuously finding opportunities in Brazil as well. But I think a regulatory framework for Brazil is under discussion. So hopefully we'll be in a good shape in short term to attract investments, more investments in offshore wind in Brazil soon.
Thank you, Celso. Guilherme, I have a question for you. Do you do offshore wind there, in your sources or any part of your business?
We don't have offshore yet in the portfolio, but it's I think that it's exactly as Celso was highlighting, is a technology that every company is aware and looking after. And I think from this innovation side that Brazil could jump one step, because the majority of offshore was with fixed structures. So why not we think a floating structure for the Brazilian sector, and maybe we can export this technology to other countries, because it's where the UK is at the moment researching strongly on how you can then exploit further deep sea structures with a floating rather than a fixed structure for offshore wind.
Oh, very interesting. Look, I have a question now for the three of you, and I would like to start with Guilherme. And then, if possible, I would like Clarice and or Celso to comment as well, because this is an important question. It is like that. We know that net zero 2050 is Trump Peixoto, the president of the Oil and Gas Committee. We know that net zero 2050 objectives are ambitious. And then, what are the main barriers that we face in Brazil, or we are facing in Brazil? It could be culture, regulatory, infrastructure deficiencies, for example. What are the main barriers that we face in Brazil to carry out the transition process to the low carbon economy? Right? If you could have a sub question there. I'm particularly interested in solar/smart grids, how to accelerate it further. So one is general, the challenge in general for the transition. The second one is for solar/smart grids. For you, Guilherme, and then for Clarice and or Celso. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you, Peixoto, for the question. It's a challenging one if we think our scenario, because I think we have many barriers. First is how we can structure in terms of government support, right? The demand and how Brazil is such a rich country in natural resource. So whenever we think how the solar, and I will connect already, how our solar sector is developing now and getting pace, which is in the rest of the world, the solar technology has been exploited by 10 years, and now many countries with less irradiation than Brazil has a better structured system. The role of solar energy in the energy mix is much stronger than we have in Brazil. So I think first is explaining the education side of integrating everyone in the transition. It's really important, but at the same time is thinking that the transition needs to be inclusive. So we cannot, when we think, Celso was explaining this transformation from BP, we have the similar case here in the North Sea of the UK. You have many people employed in this in the oil and gas sector. So making this transition inclusive, is one of the main drivers to guarantee that we're going to reach net zero with support of the population, because you have many actions that are painful, if I can say in this way. Of course, that we shouldn't be investing, in my opinion, in thermoelectric in Brazil at the moment, considering the whole capacity and these other technologies that we have available that could bring more. But I understand that in the short term is a way to see how we can reduce the cost and reduce the burden that the population is already facing with the increased cost of electricity for them. And this includes not only domestic, but also industries that we need to think that we need use electricity for everything. And without energy, we won't have smartphones, we don't have our laptops, we don't have industries producing basic needs and features that we utilize in our everyday life. So it's really important to break this barrier, include everyone in the discussion, and guarantee that the government is aware on how to make the painful actions, but at the same time counterbalance and guarantee that everyone will go in this transition together.
Thank you very much, Guilherme. Clarice and Celso, would you like to comment on? No. Oh, Celso by 1 second ahead of Clarice.
Clarice, please go ahead. I can follow you.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I was just going to comment, I think important comments that Guilherme made there. From our side, I think regulation is definitely an issue there, that but we have been seeing movements, and it's being addressed, like I think like preparing the market to it. When it comes to offshore wind, then we know that IBAMA has launched the reference term, for example, while in the Congress there are projects defining the allocation of blocks for offshore wind, which would be similar to EMP. So that's very positive that these issues have started to be addressed. And in solar, I reckon there is like an enormous growth on distributed power generation. So that's also, I think, a positive sign. So those I reckon would be the key elements to unlock this reaching the net zero. So that they require massive investment, and there is a high cost, but we need to start and work on a bigger pace, isn't it? So Celso, over to you.
Thank you, Clarice. A very brief comment here, Fabio, and thanks, Peixoto, for the question. It's specifically about what it takes to really be on track in lowering the carbon of our energy segment. There is a report from International Energy Agency launched last week, the World Energy Outlook, and they mentioned that with current goals, we would only meet in 2030 20% of what is needed to be on track of the Paris goals. So we are not definitely not on track of the goals established in Paris. To get there, it would require to triple investments in clean energy and infrastructure. This is globally, but naturally that would reflect in Brazil. And so definitely we do need investment and in infrastructure and in production. But what comes before the investment is the proper environment, attractive environment for companies to invest. And what is, in more details, a clear and stable regulatory framework, clear and stable political environment, clarity on the country's goals into their decarbonization, into energy production. So there is a few components in this attractive environment, and I will not go deep into it, but this is something we have to keep discussing. And
Fabio,
if I can,
yeah,
jump in,
Guilherme. Yeah,
on Celso's point, I think that we need to change from the company's perspective that some clean investment, it's not a cost, it's an investment, and I think this is a challenge sometimes, because you either how we can integrate with carbon markets, for example, the trading scheme. It's really important to give a economic signal for the Brazilian market that emitting more and more cannot be compensated in the way that it is at the moment. This is where the UK market, and I think the EU market is evolving quite strongly, and the US and China market are going. Setting a price for carbon, it's a really, really strong component to give a bonus for those that are taking the risks, as Clarice mentioned, of investment, and guarantee that they're gonna be remunerated or compensated in a certain way whenever they take the leadership of investments in green technologies that guarantee the support for net zero. But really important that we have a stability on the regulatory side and political side in our country.
Thank you very much, Guilherme. And that's my main concern. So it seems, that the concerns are drifting more towards governance, about operating environment, and the capabilities to make it happen are quite different in OECD and emerging countries. And that's what worries me most, in the future. It's about governance and operating environment, the difference in capacities to make it happen in OECD or rich countries and emerging countries. And then there is a big question there, which is not for you to answer now, because I'm just going ahead of some questions here, which is how OECD countries could help, emerging countries to go faster in this arena, right? So, but now I'm taking Celso. There's a direct question for Celso about, I'm translating here from Portuguese to English. What is the major challenge in this process of transition from IOC to IEC? The financial logics of the projects is different. Risk versus returns. And this could impact profitability of the company and the relationship with shareholders. And there is another question, I'm trying to cluster it, which is more general, not only for BP, and how will it happens in terms of this financial and economic return, because the company could end, his survival, could not survive if it's not well managed. That's the biggest question. So I'll pass it on to Celso, and then if Guilherme and Clarice would like to comment on.
Thanks, Fabio, and thanks for the question. It's probably one of the main questions that we hear recently related to this whole reinventing process. And there is no short answer, but a few comments about that. Well, before anything, we have to be transparent in what we want to do. And that's what we are trying to do, to make clear BP's plans to invest in this transition from a high intensity in terms of carbon to a lower intensity. There are several renewable sources and projects that do have an attractive return. So we are already there. And there are many others that are being developed. And in a short term, more and more new technologies, new power sources, new energy sources will be available to complement in a matrix of projects and a portfolio that is reliable from a financial standpoint. So this is a fact. We already see that happening. And at last but not least, we understand that BP do not have all the expertises and is not intending to have. So we are pretty much relying on partnering, on matching expertises and investment risks with partners in order to get there. So in terms of financial risk, this is a good practice, and also in terms of complementing expertises and opportunities with partners worldwide. So this is a very brief answer for a complex question, but happy to take that more deeply if you want.
Yeah, again, we go back to the environment, isn't it? To the governance and how to create a proper operating environment to, to enable, this transition with reasonable returns, to what is invested. Clarice, I think you opened the mic, I saw it with, Ascança here.
I did. I was going to comment. Of course, your question was more directly to the operators making the transition to being energy providers. But I reckon from the supply chain, this is also something that scares people. So where is my income going to come? And I reckon one of the answers is to make sure that this transition is as smooth as possible. And this is something I highlighted. But if you look at the investments, all the projects that have been announced from this year until 2030, so like over the next 9-10 years, 50% of it, 52% are still going to go towards downstream, upstream, and midstream. So what I think, moving your question from an operator to the supply chain, the answer would be to try to go as smooth as possible. So when the time comes to really have this whole transition done, you're already gaining your income from other sources as well. So you can enable companies to diversify. And I reckon that's what the operators are doing as well, isn't it? It's not turning the key, it's making it as smooth as possible.
Thank you very much, Clarice. Guilherme, would you like to jump in as well?
Yes, Fabio. I think it's really important on the perspective as well. Celso mentioned about the transparency is how you interact with people, with companies and funds who is lending money for the projects you want to invest. So how you are raising funding, it's really important to align the expectations since the beginning. Companies will need to do some adjustments sometimes for more risk seeker projects when you need to test in the piloting phase. So as quicker as you go, sometimes you need that financial money. Sometimes we need to come from your balance sheet. So it needs to be the company bearing part of the risk to guarantee that you test that initial phase, and you have a business case to then go to the market and saying, look, I tested already, I have some numbers, we can make this possible in a large scale and we can roll out together. But at the same time, what we are trying to work with funders of our projects is saying, okay, are you more risk seeker on this type of project? We have a huge opportunity here to be the first one developing these on the market. And I think that funders are getting more and more aware of their responsibility with the three letters of the moment, which is ESG, on how they also guarantee that the money that they are investing will bring return beyond the economics and guarantee that they are making an environmental contribution as well.
Thank you, Guilherme. Well, we hope that COP26 pushes it all forward now, as of 31st of October. Look, there's a question here for all. It is about infrastructure, on how to develop port infrastructure encompassing the energy transition. And then the trillion-dollar question is how to go through this period of transition, meeting the old demand and the new, the current demand and the new. So whatever you wish to comment on this, about the port, how to develop the port infrastructure for the energy transition, and this more generic question about how to make it through. Would you like to start your own screen, Guilherme, and then Clarice and Sergio would like to comment on, or if you want to pass it on to Dan and then you jump in later, feel free, guys, over to you.
Yeah, I don't have exactly knowledge on the port side, but I think the perspective of infrastructure is really important. I will make a jump just to explain, to give an example on the transmission capacity that we have in our energy system. This is a bottleneck in the UK, and I think will be a bottleneck for any country increasing the capacity of renewable intermittent generation, is how you can make your grid cope with this transition. It's a challenge. We're going to need more and more technology and different ways to guarantee that our infrastructure is ready for the new technology that will be connected for us. And I think that sitting everyone and addressing the second question is we need to collaborate together because it will impact everyone. From the old demands that we have in the market to the new ones that are coming, we need to guarantee that the transition is clear. And I think an important point is showing how you're going to deliver, because then both sides understand what are the contribution and what are the responsibilities to deliver the results. So I think when we get a BP example on this transition is how you can get the passive on the old operation to the new one and guarantee that you're doing this transition in a transparent way, guaranteeing that all demands are matched with the new ones. I think this is the best strategy you can have for your shareholders, consumers, and employees that are carrying this forward.
Thank you, Guilherme. Clarice, yourself. Clarice?
Yes. I think on the port infrastructure, one of the answers is to have the public and private partnerships working together, not only relying on government, but also allowing the infrastructure to develop. So of course it is key. And I think as Guilherme was saying, the collaborating together, it's really important. So I think we can see the example of the support here in the state of Rio, how much has, what role they are playing now and how much they have developed from the past 5 years. It's very impressive. I hope we can have more examples like this. And on the other question about the old to the new transition, I reckon here I would mention the need of allowing some technologies to mature. So for example, when it comes to hydrogen, we know that it will impact the port infrastructure, but we need to understand what are the technologies that are really going to be the ones chosen to move forward. So I would say we would need some time to let it mature. It's not clear yet, and we need some time to see to see what path it's going to take in terms of technology.
Thank you, Clarice. Celso?
Short one, Fabio. Not only to ports, but also to infrastructure in general. We do need to incentivize competition. Competition is very important to attract investments. And while we do so, we should improve the access to infrastructure in Brazil, reduce monopoly, and this agenda that you guys know very well. And in the same time, protecting and make it worth it, the investments that are made in infrastructure. So once we reach this balance, we can reach the commercial and the market balance that is already a reality in several countries, that basically is attractive for new companies and protects the society interests, because you do have the best prices, the best services. So that would be a very important thing. Enable access, improve competition, and value and recognize the investment that is already there.
Thank you. Again, we go to a governance, regulatory, again and again and again, and also partnership. You know, partnership skills. The three of you have commented. They require a different set of skills. The capacity to connect. I'm just, you know, doing this. It's energy connection here, but the capacity to connect and make partnerships, because you do not have all the answers there. There is a more specific question here. Oh, I'm sorry, Clarice has already spoken. Yes. There is another question here about, you know, quite assertive, I think. Today, it is clear that without storage of energy in intermittent sources, the goals, the reduction goals are illusion. Quite a strong statement. Are you making something around this? Are you having focus on this? I'm quite sure you are, but maybe if you want to comment something on intermittent sources, that would be quite important. Storage of energy from intermittent sources.
I think I can start this one, Fabio. Intermittency is a feature of some energy sources, and it will be like that forever. So we do have to continuously developing ways to mitigate that and compensate that. And we already have stable and reliable sources such as biomass, such as gas. We have storage capacity being proved with time to time. We have in December a capacity auction coming up specifically to offset this intermittency. So there is a matrix of components that are already in place and will be even more improved in the years to come, that will compensate this intermittency and also enable those sources, those very important sources such as solar and wind, to develop more and more. So I don't see really that as an issue to reach neutrality. Actually, this is a very good example of how and why integration is important.
It seems to me that technology is not the main issue, isn't it? It's more the other side, the regulatory, the operating environment. Very interesting. Nobody said it's a technological challenge. It's not. It appears that technology is not is an important issue, but not the key one. Guilherme and Clarice, would you like to comment on?
Fabio, I will disagree slightly, just 10% in terms of the technology, because I think that we are still behind in some countries as deployed in the countries. Long hours storage capacity with the technology when you don't have hydro or you don't want to rely on burning fossil fuels to achieve this base load of your energy system. So I think that you have many technologies evolving, and green hydrogen is probably the most exciting one, in my opinion, for long-term storage in a certain way. But you have other technologies that are also using weight, mechanical storage rather than chemical ones as lithium, that can probably provide these in 5 and 10 years. We're going to have a winner technology for long-term storage that will compensate the intermittency of solar and wind. You have a study from US utilities showing that solar with a 4 hours storage system is able to provide 98% of base load profile compared just with the solar without that storage. So imagine solar with a 100 hours battery. You can achieve a really strong capacity of covering all your demand of generation just with a technology that is no marginal cost of generating, and with the technology itself, the hardware, going down and down in terms of price. So you have solar as the cheapest format of electricity in the world at the moment, which is really competitive, and you have new performance coming, record after record being broken. by new technologies in the generation of poly and monosilicon. So I really believe that we are just one step ahead, behind in terms of the long-term storage, but we're going to get there, and we can achieve a lot with the technology we already have in place today.
You are very kind. You may fully disagree. If we talk about diversity and innovation, it's good to disagree, isn't it? Clarice, thank you very much, Guilherme. Clarice, over to you.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I think technology will definitely give us more flexibility, but with what we already have in place, I think it's definitely key to have a more varied matrix. And we mentioned a lot there, solar and wind, but I would like to take into consideration nuclear as well. There is definitely a role to keep it more, to keep it a more stable, let's say, matrix and avoid the gaps on those intermittent sources. So yes, I think I would be in the middle between the opinions there. I would say it's a mix between the new technologies for storage, yes, of course, but also the having a more varied matrix to give us this stability that we need.
Thank you very much. You're very, I think that this panel, I've been moderating many panels here, have been very much to the point and very assertive. I would say gentle assertiveness here. Very good. Look, I'm in the end here. It's 1 minute to go. I'm already being pressed here by Renata. Renata, sorry to mention your name, but you're right. This is a UK arena, so punctuality is important here. So I'm just going to say some final words here. I would like very much to, there are questions on green H2, you know, how to accelerate hydrogen. Offshore wind, carbon markets, we couldn't go deeper into this, you know, to implement carbon markets. And also SMEs, you know, small and medium enterprise. And there's so much to be done in this area. Scope 3, you know, regulation to support it all. There's so many things to be done there, but unfortunately, there's no time. Look, I would like to thank you all for being with us here, especially our three great panelists, Clarice, Guilherme, and Celso. Really, it was quite exciting to be here with you. You know, today I was a bit down, and then you just gave a shot of energy here with me, and I'm sure with the audience as well. Also, my thanks to Tony Preston and the UK government, you know, all the support they are giving to British Chamber, to the British Chamber and to the event. Renata, thank you so much, Renata, for inviting us, Britain, to be here. And the teams, the supporting teams in the Energy Connection event, the NRB teams, and Britain, Fabricio, etc. Right, Fabricio is always there, you know, the executive manager of the British Chamber, and which made, you know, this UK arena happen. So please, the Energy Connection Summit will follow with other national and international panels and debates until Thursday, the 21st of October. Please don't miss the virtual rooms. You might have seen in the platform. And do not forget to stop by at britain.com.br, you know, to see the next events and all the opportunities there. And I always finish with these words. We're in difficult times there. Be well and healthy. You already know it. Clarice and Celso already. Be well and healthy, you and yours, internally and externally. All the best for you and for everyone here. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.